Hey, it's Samantha with the Rediscover Real podcast. I am so thrilled to be here with you. Are you feeling overwhelmed, confused, or stuck on a hamster wheel from constantly seeking external tools, validation, and buffering in a search for more joy and fulfillment? Rediscover Real means to pull back the curtain and return to the foundation, peeling away the layers of mindsets, identities, and beliefs that no longer serve us. As we choose to grow, move forward, and show up fully as God intended, because at our very core, inside of you, lies everything already, as God created you absolutely perfect. We get to uncover and rediscover what's inside of us, and then to expand into what we're capable of. In this space, we'll dive into topics on personal finance and budgeting, mindset and growth, relationships, network marketing, and entrepreneurship. I'm sure there'll be some laughter and possibly a few tears along the way. I'm on this journey, and you're invited. I'm holding out my hand for you. Will you join me? Let's rediscover real together. What are you craving most in life? Today, we are talking about the 6 human needs, and this comes from Tony Robbins. I'll drop one of his links for a YouTube video of his in the show notes, but I wanted to break these down because I've talked about them in other episodes, and I wanted to make sure there was a place where you can find this and hear some of my thoughts around them and how as I've learned about this and walked through this and continue to do growth and mindset work around this has really impacted me and really helps me determine what's going on behind the scenes. What am I motivated? Where's my motivation lying? What am I seeking first? And is that healthy? So let's jump in. So the 6 human needs are, and I'll dive into these deeper, but I'll just run through them first, are certainty, uncertainty or variety, significance, love and connection, and then there's 2 spiritual needs, which are growth and contribution. And I'll explain more of that in a bit. So these are fundamental drives within each one of us that compel us forward in the quest to experience life and finding a life of meaning. And so there's no conscious effort necessary. Our will to satisfy these primal needs is automatic. And I think that's important just to note. And where this comes from is really what we're seeking first and most. So I'll come back to that, but so let's talk about certainty first. So we all crave certainty, right? We all want stability around basic necessities, food, water, shelter, other, kind of material resources, right? When people can't control these, they often look towards, through kind of state of mind, like whether it's positive outlook, or you'll see people when they're in a really sometimes dark place, that's when they'll like turn to God more, which is, I think God can use all things together for good. And he does provide, so many things. And that's, we know that is such, whether you have it all or whether you have nothing, we have nothing without God and accepting him as our Lord and Savior, right? And his love for us is incredible and unconditional, no matter what we've done or haven't done. Anyways, so certainty, then uncertainty or variety. So if we have all the certainty in the world and we have our whole path nailed down, you'll oftentimes see people kind of like throw a wrench in things. Because people we crave variety and uncertainty. And so oftentimes they'll, maybe it's going on a trip or going on an adventure, or oftentimes we'll see this with relationships. They have the perfect person and the relationship is fantastic, but they get bored, right? And start to seek things in other places because they crave that variety, right? And that's, I'm not going to get into the topic of relationships and how important, there's lots of people out there that, you know, we talk about keeping the spark alive and variety, and having that uncertainty, you know, the piece where you're, you know, when you first start getting to know someone, and continuing that as you know, are in a long-term relationship, married to them, etc. Right? Number 3 is significance. Everybody needs to feel special, and important in some way. Now, first of all, you are special and you are important because you're a child of God. Hopefully you accept that in your heart. And so we see the world, there's a whole lot of like, everybody's trying to like be special and be important and different, and all of that. And we're seeking that first. And here's the key with all of these is, it's not that any of these are bad at all. It's if you're seeking one of these, especially these 4 the most or first, in an unhealthy way, it can lead to really unhealthy patterns and mindsets, and just how you operate. So we seek significance through obtaining recognition from others, and when we feel insignificant, this can make people sometimes try to feel significant by getting angry, or they might try to seek significance through like, due to the size or complexity of their problems, right? Like, oh, well, my problems are bigger than your problems, you know, and we see a lot of scarcity come up in that, right? And people kind of, that's their identity of like, oh, you know, like, even we see that often with people who are ill and struggling with their health, is they're like, well, you know, my problems, well, you know, this, right? And you kind of see that there's like this weird competition that happens. And again, this is all said from a place of love and understanding, because I've been here, I've walked this journey, and so I feel it. Number 4 is love and connection. So humans need to feel connected to something or someone, a person, an ideal, a value, a habit, or a sense of identity. Connection may take the form of love, or it may be created by a sense of belonging or a spiritual sense. People, like the rest of them, people can fulfill this in a positive way, or like fulfill this need in positive and negative ways, right? And I think that's really important, that it's, if all we're doing is seeking love and connection, just, and I'm going to say this again, God's unconditional love, we are accepted, we are loved unconditionally. He's the only one that will ever love us truly unconditionally. There's no human on the planet that, you know, we're humans, and that's, I mean, there's some people that are incredible and come close to that, but trying to seek that on the planet is, quite frankly, unattainable. And like I said, you can attain that looking for that in negative ways and positive ways. And if that's all we're seeking is love and connection, especially in negative ways, that's not, you're going to see negative patterns and outcomes from that. And then number 5 is growth. Everything is either growing or dying. Everything. It doesn't matter how much money you have, how many people acknowledge you, or what you have achieved. Unless you feel like you're growing, you're going to be unhappy and unfulfilled. And I think this can look very different depending on where you're at in life, as well as from a spiritual place, and again, depending on your beliefs around that. But how are you growing, right? I see people, and I've walked through phases where you're stagnant, you're not growing, you're not leaning into growth in any way, and it leaves you feeling very unfulfilled. And I mean, now, like, I'm going to say this again, earthly things are never going to, you know, satisfy us or fulfill us. That's not what we're after. It comes back to a spiritual walk, right? And what we're seeking, right? To be more Christ-like. Then number 6 is contribution. We all have a deep need to go beyond ourselves and to live a life that serves the greater good. In the moment that we do this, we experience true joy and fulfillment. Contribution is the ultimate secret to the joy, so that so many people wish to have in their lives. And it's huge when you see people step into these 2 kind of spiritual needs of growth and contribution. That's when people feel so much fulfillment, right? And again, I mean, contribution from a Christian perspective, right? How can we help people feel God's love, his unconditional love towards them, right? And how are we contributing to that? So we have the need for certainty, but we also have the need for uncertainty. We have the need for significance, but we also have the need for connection, right? And those are often like a paradox. And so looking at where this shows up in a healthy way and an unhealthy way is really huge. So something that I would encourage you to do is if you take a piece of paper and you can put these 6 things down and kind of have 2 columns under each one, and what's positive and what's negative. Where are you seeking certainty in positive ways and then in negative ways? Where are you seeking uncertainty and variety in positive ways and in negative ways? Significance, love and connection, and those 4. And you can do it with growth and contribution too, but that's those 2. Like if you're stuck in trying to gain certainty, let's say through growth, right? And like constantly learning. So many people go and get stuck in that like learning mode instead of like action. Violet came to visit. And so you can seek those things, or if you're constantly looking to contribute and give, and you give so much that like, till your fingers bleed and you kind of become a martyr on the other side of that, we can take those things to the other extreme, right? So looking at those things again in negative and positive ways is really important. And then which 2 needs have you been valuing most? So if you're constantly seeking significance and how you can be special, significant, or if you're seeking, you're just always seeking certainty, the bottom line is we live in an uncertain world. We live in an imperfect world. Things are going to come up. And if you're so driven by certainty, and I used to be, that used to be like a hardcore thing for me, was I was seeking certainty so hard and then seeking significance. And I saw it, especially like actually with budgeting and some of the identities that I took on initially with budgeting, of people told me that, oh, well, you're really good with money. I should just give you all of my money to manage. Like those are things that people told me. And so I took on that identity of that was like significant. But that also wasn't healthy. And so being able to shift in my finances and in teaching even to how can I serve, but not from a place of like, because I'm really good at this, because I'm on this journey. And like, I used to seek certainty from that place of like, I was in a scarcity mindset with my finances. And so I'd like budget so tightly. And that's where people are like, oh, well, you're good at this. And I'm like, I actually am not good at this. I'm just really good at holding on to something and living in scarcity and telling myself really scarcity minded stories, right? And really rooted in that. It wasn't healthy. It wasn't from a growth place. It wasn't from a place of contribution. It wasn't from a place of healthily seeking certainty and variety. Yeah. And so being able to look at those and take an honest look is really, really important. So as I've been on this growth journey, I went from really seeking certainty and significance. And then I kind of went to seeking uncertainty and significance in some ways. And I'd say I'm still on that journey. Things have shifted a little bit more, and continue to, depending on where I'm at. And also going through that exercise and in what ways, in different situations where I'm seeking different things in negative and positive ways, has been really helpful and interesting to me in being able to take a look at how am I showing up for my life, and where do I get to dig in and do some work in this area, and where am I seeking growth and contribution over significance or over certainty. And that's a huge piece. So I hope that that's helpful in sharing. Like I said, definitely this comes from Tony Robbins, and I'll drop a link to his he's got a few YouTube videos on it, but really digging into that and looking at that, because it is how we operate. And when you start to see that in your life of, okay, what am I seeking here? Positive ways, negative ways, right? Even with, we can apply this, I've seen in areas where, whether it be with relationships, with finances, with recreation, my fun adventures and all of those pieces. What am I seeking here? Even in friendships, I used to seek certainty in friendships so deeply over love and connection, not significance. I'd say there's maybe been times where I've been seeking significance in friendships, but more often than not, it's seeking certainty and knowing, and kind of that unconditional love in friendships. And that's not the case. That's not how that works. Instead of being able to seek contribution and love and connection in those, that's been a big shift for me. And when you can look at, okay, what am I actually seeking here in this? How you show up, and how you show up as a friend, how you show up as a spouse, how you show up in business, or in your career, with your health, and with working out and food and all of those pieces. I actually have the exercise here. When last time I went through this, not that long ago, and in where I was seeking certainty, in my working out, and where I was seeking significance. And it's really, and you can have multiple, they can come up in multiple ways, right? For example, I had, being single, I had dating come up in uncertainty and variety, in a negative way. I also had it come up in significance, both in positive and in negative, in different ways. And then also in love and connection, both in negative and in positive ways. And also in uncertainty. And being able to look at okay, well, where is it coming up the most? And also in what areas, what am I seeking at different times? And how do I want to show up for that? And we, you see people show up they're so desperate to have certainty in their future, let's say, that in relationships, they're just seeking that stable, certain relationship, right? Not necessarily healthy. They just want that certainty, right? Or finances. They're willing to, they're just staying in that bubble and not looking to expand at all. They're staying on that hamster wheel because they think it's certain, even though jobs are never certain, right? Anything could change at any point in time for a business. Nothing is certain. We live on this earth, right? So hopefully this is helpful and helps kind of pull back the curtain on what's actually driving you and what are our human needs. And like I said, none of them are bad. It's what are you seeking the most? And when you can get to a place where you seeking significance in ways is not bad. It's what are you seeking first, right? Is it in positive or negative ways? And how is it impacting the rest of my life, right? All right. You just finished another episode of the Rediscover Real podcast. My hope is always that you come away encouraged. And if you found this valuable, would you share it with a friend? And be sure to tag me on social media. I love seeing your takeaways. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss any episodes. And I would so appreciate it if you took a second to rate and review this podcast so that more people can find it. Also, take a peek in the show notes for a link to my website that has a special gift just for you for listening today. As always, I'm on the journey and you're invited. Let's rediscover real together.